Now, when it comes to scale, you don't get much smaller than a treehouse.
Oh, no. You can say that this is the perfect escape. Up in the trees, away from it all.
As long as you're not afraid of heights, Colin.
Tree houses are having a bit of a moment. The drive for less impact on the environment has led some people to dramatically lessen their footprint and go up into the trees. These homes are often no bigger than the average living room. They're the perfect example of what architects call intimate scale.
This treehouse was designed by homeowner Lynn Knowlton as an escape to share with her husband, and it is literally a 5-minute walk away in her backyard.
Whoa! Is that a little wood nymph I see there in the forest? How are you?
Great. How are you?
We're good. All the better for seeing you in this incredible, elevated way of living. This is incredible, and tell us a bit about the background.
Thank you. Well, it's a treehouse. Hope you love it.
It's a treehouse on steroids. Look at it.
Yeah.
It's unlike any treehouse I've ever seen.
We love it. We absolutely love it.
What made you build a treehouse in your garden?
Well, our friend, she had a barn that's local, and we had a tornado come through, and it destroyed her barn, and we built this entire treehouse from that barn.
So that's like next level upcycling.
Totally.
That's so fantastic.
So did you build it for you? Was it for you and your husband?
We built it for our children, except that we actually ended up loving it way more than the children. We almost never let them in there. We're like, this is like our little getaway, a nice little escape. It just became an adult retreat.
I absolutely love that concept. I mean, so many people travel so far and to get to their special place, yet you've got that in your own garden.
It is. I love it.
For the longest time, there's been a real kind of ambition for people to miniaturize their lifestyle, and scale has become a really, really big word.
Yes.
Small-scale living is something that really appeals to me, and you've taken this small-scale living and made it absolutely perfect. But not only that, you've stacked it up on high heels and hidden it in this tiny cluster of trees in your garden. Now, how big is that?
16 by 20.
OK, so it's a really concise space, but it's so structurally well composed. I like the mix of the painted timber at the bottom level, the barn board in the middle, and then that kind of dark terracotta shade for the shingles on the roof. It really is very visually pleasing. And I bet when you're in there, it feels every bit as good.
It does, it does. Like our plan was to have it so that it kind of mixed in with the natural surroundings. When we first built the treehouse, it was considered playground equipment. We built it so long ago. It was long before it was something that we even considered would be a building. It was just a treehouse for our children. So we built it on all the existing trees right there, and they're all beautifully straight trees, and there was a lot of them. The downfall of that was the strength of a tree is not what they're considered to be structurally sound. So fast forward, many years later, we had to make the treehouse building code structurally sound, had to hire structural engineers, and so we put the posts in. But we made lemonade out of those lemons and made that space into a dining space underneath the treehouse, because oftentimes that's a space that's wasted. So we wanted to have a dining space and a place to lounge.
That's really clever planning, actually, because when your space is small, you've got to make it all work really well on every particular level.
Absolutely.
This place is off the charts.
Oh, my word. Lynn, can we never, ever leave? And I've not even been in yet. Can we stay forever?
Can we take a look inside?
Come on in.
It's like a little perfect, beautiful, rustic jewel box.
When you walk into a place like this, it's like walking into an adventure. It's like becoming part of a secret, a little vacation retreat, and just falling in love.
This feels so clean, like so tranquil. And it's tiny, it's not a big space.
Clearly, Lynn, what you're doing here is you're using every piece of real estate. And when proportions are small, scale is an issue, and you have to address that head on. And walking around, we can see that you're already doing that masterfully.
So glad you guys love it.
Off the charts.
It's amazing. And we're up here in the trees, an incredible view of the forest. And just when you think it couldn't get any higher, there's a staircase.
No,
sorry. So sorry. Exactly.
Yeah, please do.
I gotta get up here. Oh, wow. Come on.
Is there room for another one, Colin?
Yeah, get up here.
You've very carefully occupied the space that you have and made it relevant. And when scale is an issue, the proportion of everything has got to have a relevance. So everything's miniaturized, but by Jove, it's spectacular.
So scale is very important for sustainability. There's no magic number for what's right. It's just figure out what your needs are and build the minimum you need to suit your needs.
Architecturally, this is so rewarding. It's not enormous, but very cleverly, you've packed in lots of function without each of those functions overwhelming the others.
Yeah, you know, the thing about working in a small space is it's nice to take every part and make it different. So, for example, all the windows open differently. One will slide. This one here, I love how it goes up on a rope.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And the structural pieces are mixing the old with the new.
I mean, obviously, when space is limited, you've got to be really creative in the way that you make it work. And you've done that so well, because there's lots of function in what's essentially a small room. Dining space here, wash space over there, living space, bedroom gallery up there. You've got an absolutely gorgeous treehouse.
Thank you.
OK, well, I think it's time to get out of here, and I know how I'm leaving.
The slide?
Absolutely.
You guys are daring.
Come on, give it a go, Colin.
You ready?
Impressive stuff. Now, I feel like I'm sliding down my own treehouse birthing tunnel. Scale and proportion were obviously critical when putting together a project such as this, because it's small. But within, there's space to dine, to recline, to chill with friends.
Small spaces can have huge heart as long as you attend to the small details. And the experience here is like no other space. You know, it is the feel-good factor to the 10th degree. It does have a tangible sense of greatness, of well-being, of escape.
I think it's fair to say that this is a masterful observation of how to plan your space.
We have a lot in common with our next homeowners. They're proudly Scottish. We're proudly Scottish.
And they, just like us, moved to a brand new country that they absolutely love.
And when the opportunity came for them to build a new home in their new place, they decided to go fully traditional.
And build a Scottish longhouse.
Longhouses are one of the earliest man-made shelters. They were a simple design, one long, narrow open room with a fire in the centre. In the winter, the cattle were brought in to share the space and help keep the interior warm.
Longhouses have one other notable feature. They're very large.
Homeowners and builders Scott and Lynn have kept the scale and proportion of the traditional longhouse, affectionately called the coo shed, Scottish for cow.
Well, well, well. What a place. My gosh.
What an amazing, amazing house. It is absolutely massive, isn't it? You know, you see it's a long house and it is properly long.
Tell us about this place, because it's completely spellbinding.
Scottish longhouse.
Okay.
What can I say? It's all designed from an original Scottish longhouse. It's 84 foot long in total by 24 foot wide.
So what typifies a Scottish longhouse?
Scottish longhouse originated way back. It was one of the first settlements in Scotland where families actually shared the house with cattle. In the wintertime.
Any
obviously.
cows in there?
No, just 2 dogs.
Okay,
No,
just you guys.
Yeah, just us and the dogs.
And it's exactly what it sounds like, isn't it? It's a series of rooms in a row,
Exactly.
creating
Yep.
a long space.
Just a long space.
Looks like a modern version of a typical barn.
And that's probably accentuated by the fact that it's not punctuated by lots of windows.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, keeping with the longhouse style, there's very little windows to keep the hard weather out and stuff. We get the southeast prevailing winds in the winter time, and it just pounds in here. So in winter, we just close these over.
I mean, the doors are massive. I'd love to see them rolled back, can we?
Yeah, of course.
Sure.
That's like a prison. You're not getting in, you're not getting out.
No.
That is fantastic. It looks like a proper barn.
When we drove up, we saw a property of considerable scale. What is the square footage?
Square footage is just under 1,900 square foot main level,
Okay.
without the garage.
Okay, and have you got a basement as well?
Full finished basement.
Oh,
Yeah,
really? So
yeah.
that's, what, 3,800 square
Yeah,
feet altogether?
yeah, round about
plus
that.
a garage as well.
Come on in, I'll show you around.
Thought you never asked.
Hey.
Oh, hello. Oh, now this is really incredibly bright and fresh. Having been outside and seen that big, dramatic black exterior, the last thing I expected was to come into a big white space with tons of colour.
It's amazing. You know, you can see why it's called a long house. It's incredibly long.
I didn't really know what to expect when I came inside here, so to see this really modern, friendly family home and the big, expansive views, it's knockout. I think the secret of making an old architectural style work is to figure out what you need to do to change it to make it good for the modern day. And the windows are now large in this longhouse rather than small as they would have been, and giving you that fantastic view across the greenery to that century barn.
The history of the longhouse is basically flipped on its head. because the longhouse was just the shed and it kept all the bad weather out, and now we want to bring the outside in.
The living wall's brilliant.
It's quite the maintenance, to be honest.
Is it really?
It really is.
But well worth it, I'm sure.
It really is. I absolutely love it.
It's all about the outdoors and the inside and that language that exists between both.
It's a good look, isn't it? And, you know, for me, you know, I like it when architecture surprises you. You know, I like to be surprised. So I love the idea that someone gets to the front door and they have this expectation it's going to be dark. Where are the windows? Is it a shed? You know, is it a barn? What's going on here? And then you walk in, you know, and it takes your breath away. You're like, and you got to just take a little second and go, wow.
Everything's very, very deliberate. And there's something fantastic about these massive doors that they're employing for opening up that entryway. That kind of scale that we don't get in a domestic situation, kind of like a barn. But when you get inside, everything's very, very tailored, very particular, and quite luxurious, in fact.
So you've got the living room, you've got the dining room and the kitchen, you've got bedrooms. What's in the basement?
We have a further 2 bedrooms down the stairs, a family bathroom and a full finished rec room and a pretty cool bar.
Oh,
A bar.
okay.
See,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
no Scottish home should be without a bar.
Of course.
Exactly.
Now, you're a builder, so building your own house, was there anything that was a big stumbling block that created problems?
The eaves trough. I had to hide it because I don't want any overhang, right? So as you know, the house is basically like that. So usually, typically, they've got the overhang, they've got the soffit and the fascia and everything. So I had to come up with a design to incorporate the guttering in there, which is it's copper. So it's basically a copper tub welded all together, and all the pipes, all the downpipes are hidden inside the external wall. So the external wall is actually about 13 inches thick. You've got your traditional 6-inch structural wall with all the insulation drywall and everything else. And then there's another 2x6 on the outside of that, which is like a curtain wall, if you like. And then the siding's fixed to that. So that was one of the biggest challenges, was coming up with that design between myself and the designer.
The word is long, isn't it, in this longhouse? The island's long.
Even the kitchen units are brought out, the uppers are brought out flush with the lowers, just with that clean slit in the wall, and it's all long, it's elongated to tie it all together.
That's a great little trick that you've played there. I think that works really, really well. It's just a great observation of space and proportion because it all balances really well. Everything seems to relate to the next part of the house. And surely that's what good architecture should do, whether it's modern or traditional, making the people that use the home as comfortable as possible. There's a great word in Scottish, and you'll know it. I'm sure most people won't. Coorie. To coorie in, to gather together and to hug. For a really modern building, it's got that kind of comfort factor inside that makes you feel really cosy. And it is a big place, but it's not overpowering. Really good house. The Scottish Longhouse, such a fantastic old-world look at architecture.
Isn't it amazing to think that something from history could actually have so much to give us in the 21st century? The idea of gathering, of community, of shared spaces.
There's a resonance to that building that goes beyond bricks and mortar. There's something extra in there. And I think it's a big word to use, but it's soul. I think that house has got real soul, which is quite a feat of achievement for a building that's essentially, in description, a big black box.
I am longing for a longhouse.
Well, you know what they say, don't you? They say that bigger is better.
Ah, but what could be bigger and better than 53 acres of organic farm in the country?
Not much, to be honest, but I'll tell you what, I hope that our owners today don't put us to work in that field.
Well, I think we're going to find out.
Suzanne has created a business out of her lavender crop from which she distills essential oils. And right in the middle of these glorious lavender fields is the main attraction, Suzanne's fantastic Georgian farmhouse.
The Georgian manor house of Lavender Farm imitates the front of a stately home, the hallmark of monumental scale.
Georgian architecture flourished in Britain in the early part of the 18th century and lasted well into the 19th century. It reflected the taste of a growing middle class who wanted to mimic the monumental scale of aristocratic estates.
Georgian architecture became popular all over the English-speaking world because of architectural pattern books that catalogued every type of Georgian style from the very grand to the most humble.
This old Georgian farmhouse has gained 2,000 square feet of living space from a recent addition. The house is 4,600 square feet in total, and Suzanne makes use of every bit of it.
Suzanne, this place is incredible.
It's hard to be in a bad mood when you're surrounded by so much lavender.
What was your inspiration, particularly to go for a lavender crop?
Just, you know, the therapeutic kind of rhythm to planting something and watching it grow and then using it for something. So, I mean, I've always been inspired to do that.
Yeah, there's so much space. I can only imagine waking up every morning and looking out to your 53 acres.
So has there been a farmhouse on this land for a long time?
Yes, the original part of the house, it was built in 1860. While the stone has been repointed and restored, it's all original and it's stunningly beautiful. And I'd love to show it to you.
Oh, we'd love to have a look.
That'd be great.
Oh, yeah, please. You see, I'm like a little boy in a candy store when I walk into a room like this because it's the perfect observation of old and new. The 1.5-inch floorboards, the wainscoting to a third height, that beautiful stone wall behind the fire.
You get this incredible sense of space.
It's actually a really large house now that it's doubled in size with the renovation at 4,600 square feet.
Wow. Why was the square footage and having that scale so important?
I love having a house this big because I have 2 teenage boys.
Okay.
I have extended family that come, sometimes 12 or 14 people that come to the house, and there's space for everybody.
Do you know, the great thing for me is the fact that you've got so many great rooms, and they're massive.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of space in every one of the rooms. You've got the same kind of scale and proportion. There's a sense of airiness as you walk through the house because of the size of the room. The original house was quite a bit smaller. So I think large families, they were used to living in smaller quarters than we are here.
We live differently now, don't we? And architecturally, what was in the past doesn't necessarily relate to how you need it to work in the future. What you've done is you've made your design for your life in the present day work within the architectural framework of an old building. And that's no mean task.
You know, it's that great sense of space where you can look through the windows, you see the beautiful countryside around, and it's that wonderful sense of expansion and exposure. It's incredible.
Definitely.
So 19th century stone buildings would have primarily been structurally stone. And stone inherently is stacked, so all the walls are going to be very big and thick, and all the window openings are going to be relatively small and deep. And we have fairly kind of geometrical layouts of space.
Oh, come on. Now, this is a kitchen.
Yeah.
You know, this is not a kitchen. This is the quintessential farmhouse kitchen, and it's massive.
It's amazing. It's big. Having just such an incredible scale, the 6-burner stove, 2 ovens, and being able to really have large groups of family and friends because I love to cook.
Yeah.
So to have a space that has room for everybody is really cool.
Yeah. You know, that is not just an island. Look at the size of it. It's so large, it should have its own capital city. That is a big, big space.
All good parties happen in the kitchen. So this island in particular is just perfect for that.
Suzanne's Georgian farmhouse does a fantastic job of mimicking a stately home, but she's not stopping there. Suzanne has plans to make her property truly monumental by turning her barn into more living space.
Wow! Just look at this place.
Yeah, it's a beautiful scale.
It's just mighty. What kind of condition was this in when you bought it?
It was terrible. I mean, when you stand inside a barn and you see the natural lighting and you get an idea of what the structure's like inside, it's incredible. It's a thing of beauty. But the back here was almost completely blown out. And I had someone come and take a look, and they said, you've got a couple of days to 2 weeks, and the entire structure will fall down. So they came in right away, restructured, and actually took 16 feet off where it wasn't structurally sound, and then built the new section. And that will keep the barn upright. They say for another 100 years, but there's a tremendous amount of work left to do in here.
What are your big ambitions for this building?
I've always wanted to have a beautiful, long, rustic harvest table and have friends and family here, and having that experience would be incredible.
It seems like that's the very essence of actually having a property like this. It's about having an idea for the future, but actually having an appreciation of the past.
Definitely. You don't have barns like this that are made anymore, and I think they're historical structures of beauty, and so I decided to go ahead and restore it.
When barns like this were being built, they were built with this natural gapping, which allows the wind to pass through, which means it's not blasted flat and pushed down. So they're actually your friends, all those gaps.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're beautiful.
Many people have a dream of escaping to the country, but you've done it to a bigger scale than most people could ever dream.
I did go large.
You bought an amazing, amazing farm. What is it they say, go big or go home? It's 4,600 square feet. That's a big house.
And yet it all feels so cozy and so escapist.
She's made a really huge place feel quite intimate. My favourite aspect, though, without a doubt, is that wonderful stonework. To see architecture and build standards from another era is just wonderful.
Yeah, and a truly unique experience where someone has taken something from the past and brought it kicking and screaming into the 21st century. So, Justin, is size all that it's cracked up to be when it comes to property?
Well, not necessarily, as we've just seen. Very different properties, but each a perfect observation of scale and size and proportion, and how all those factors come together to make a unique lifestyle opportunity for each user. Intimate, human, and monumental. 3 types of scale, each providing very distinct and individual results.
The Treehouse was perfect proof, you know, that with a small space, you can still make a huge architectural impact.
Now, I like little more than being surprised by the homes that I visit. And when I walked up and saw that huge, big barn exterior with its metal roof and its black siding, I really didn't know what to expect when we walked in the front door. But by Jove, I loved what I found. It kind of felt like going back to the homeland because it felt so personal, so Scottish, and so incredibly livable.
Suzanne's Georgian farmhouse was a question of go large and go home, and such a successful renovation for me. I love it. And just that whole flow between rooms that made it feel positively palatial.
Not to mention her plans for the barn, which pushed the space even further into monumental scale. So, 3 very different homes, 3 sets of schematic proportions, but the one thing they all shared in common, they're all great escapes. When an architect talks about the best site for a dream escape, they usually mean the view.
But that was not the case when homeowners Rick and Wendy Roman found this 50-acre wooded lot.
They knew that it actually had to have enough trees and stones to build their new home.
Which I think takes sustainability to a whole new local level.
With absolutely no building experience between them, Rick and Wendy decided to give up their city life and give homesteading a try.
When we think of homesteading, we picture 19th century pioneers, but modern-day homesteading has its roots in the self-sufficiency movement of the 1960s.
Homesteaders do as much as they can to live off-grid, and in Rick and Wendy's case, building their own dream log cabin complete with handmade furniture.
Hey, you guys.
Hey, how you doing?
Hi, nice to see you.
You've got an incredible place here, and it's so exciting to visit.
It's absolutely stunning.
You've built your home using materials that you've cropped from the land.
That's right.
Everything here has come from your 50-odd acres. And it's a post and beam, right?
It's a post and beam house. It's a construction method called pièce sur pièce,
Okay.
which means piece on piece.
Okay.
And it's a short log construction. We picked this method because we knew the 2 of us could actually handle the material. We were able to lift all these logs by ourselves.
So neither of you actually had experience of construction at all?
No.
No, we
No.
didn't.
I mean, a little painting business, putting myself through university, but that was the extent of it. And it was pre-internet, so we weren't Googling our information. We did find an incredible book which showed us some techniques to modernize the connections using routers and plywood splines and that kind of thing.
While we did research and learned as much as we could from books, a lot of it was trial and error.
How did you make the first step and take it from ambition to reality?
We thought the key was that if we could be mortgage-free, we could have a freer life. And so how do you do that?
Good way to be.
You build your own house.
You do.
You use materials from the land.
We came up on one of our vacations. We took our 2-week vacation when we were still working. Came up here in the middle of the winter because it's the best time to harvest your trees and less damage to the environment. And we cut all our trees at that point, about 150 trees. We left them in place because it was winter time. And next spring, we'd quit our jobs and we came up here full time. We bought ourselves an old tractor and we started hauling them out of the forest with this tractor.
How long did it take to build a place like this?
2.5 years from the time we started until the time we were able to move in.
Okay. You 2 had a shared dream, and you put that dream together with your own 4 hands.
And we're still together.
And you're still together.
You're still
After all of this time.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know.
It's fantastic.
I'm dying to look inside, can we?
Yes, would you like to see
do that.
inside?
Please.
Let's go in.
Oh, now what's not to love? Come on. This is just incredible.
Everything here is local. Everything in this house is from the land.
Pretty much as much as we could. So the log walls are cedar, the beams are spruce, the ceiling is pine, the floor is birch.
The rocks
All from
are
the land.
all local also.
Yeah.
Wow, this is the
Yeah.
fruits of the forest house, isn't it? For sure. And based on, well, like a 300-year-old kind of like build philosophy.
Yeah, that's right. We've used some techniques from the Scandinavians, which is the scribe fit. So no filler in between the logs. They fit tightly and snugly.
I imagine that's given you even more work than just simply flattening the logs and laying them on top of each other.
Each log gets scribed fit. There's a scriber that has a pencil on the bottom and a point on the top. The process is literally tracing the exact line of the log below it. Then that log gets turned over. It's rough cut with a chainsaw between those lines. And then we take a mallet and chisel to take it right down to the line. So in the end, there's a little bump in the log below. The log on top will be shaped exactly to fit.
These designs were smartly adapted to the environment. They were accommodating heavy snow loads, for instance, the angles of the roofs, shed water, all these things that on the one hand seem crude, but on the other hand were extremely pragmatic.
It's so exciting to look and to know that your DNA is everywhere, from the milling of the floors to the felling of the trees to making the furniture. You made all that furniture yourselves.
We did, yeah. When we had finished, we had this material left over, and we thought, well, you know, let's make some stuff from it.
Waste not, want not.
Yeah, that's right. That's the bottom line.
Clearly, you love the use of wood. I wonder, though, have you used any other materials?
Actually, we have. We've got a straw bale studio outside, if you want to see it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Come on in.
Yeah.
So straw bales are another great building material. Straw is an agricultural waste product. It has no other purpose than animal bedding. So there's no food value to it. We're not taking anything out of the food stream. It gets baled up, and then we can use it to build the walls of houses. It's really easy to use.
So this is the studio.
Wow. It's got a really great sense of, I don't know, silence and tranquility in here.
Now, this is incredible. How did you build this? What's the technique?
So it is basically the same kind of structure as the log house. It's a post and beam structure that is infilled with straw bales. They're stacked up. As you can imagine, a brick house is stacked up. And then we begin to plaster it.
And how do you do that? Where do you get the plaster and the finish?
Well, the plaster is local clay and sand that actually we have a pond out here. We would go out and dig up the clay, put it in the trailer, and then we would mix the sand and the clay together and literally put it on the walls by hand.
You know what's insane? That this land has provided so much for you. It's like a home harvest. It's like you've harvested everything from the land here, even the clay from the pond, to create your home and now your workplace.
There's a real increased drive across the world to protect the environment, and we're all on board with that. But it seems that you've gone the next step to shop local, because everything that you've used to build your magnificent home, you've harvested from around the land.
Our philosophy is we're extracting our materials locally, so the embodied energy is very low. It's very sustainable. We cut our trees 29 years ago. When you go into that forest now, the trees that are adjacent to those trees have gotten to the size that you could use them for a log house again.
So minimal impact on the environment, I suppose, is the nutshell of what you guys are chasing.
Definitely.
The idea of organic has just gone out the window, because this is the most organic property I've ever encountered, almost like it just sprouted out of the ground right here.
This is a building that so beautifully references an old style of home construction, but it takes all of that and it manicures it and it makes it perfect for this modern day and age.
The idea that you don't use more than you actually need, you don't waste anything, and that everything that you need for your future could be right under your feet.
For some people, the idea of building a 5-star holiday getaway and combining it with eco-sensibilities would be perceived as an impossible task.
Word has it that our next property was built after the owner was told that it couldn't be done.
So undeterred, she rose to the challenge to build the most incredible eco-lodge that you can ever imagine.
Let's take a look at the result.
And here it is, built on 700 feet of shoreline in the midst of a cedar forest. eTerra is the passion project of owner Laurie Adams.
Working alongside an architectural firm known for its eco-conscious buildings, Laurie paid meticulous attention to each detail to ensure every aspect of eTerra is sustainable.
There are 6 two-level guest rooms, each with its own ensuite. Laurie's goal is to reconnect her guests with their natural surroundings.
Oh, Laurie, this truly is an oasis.
It is. It's nature at its best.
You're incredibly lucky to live somewhere like this. The sound of the leaves, the sound of the water, it's stunning.
If you like water features, follow me.
Oh, there's an offer.
It's quite the place, Laurie.
Well, the whole place was designed around this water feature. So we could blast it out of here, or I just said, move the building 6 feet.
You didn't kind of change
No.
the location of the rock. You built the house on top of that.
We built around it. Everything is focused around this rock. I just redid the water lines so that they were naturally flowing. And then this also acts as my humidifier because I have so much wood in the building.
This building does feel like it's got a proper heart. I love the fact that you've really thought about eco-sensibilities. Tell us more about some of the things that have been conspired to create this wonderful home.
One of the things was how small could we make the actual physical footprint on the ground? So in order to do that, you do have to go
Yeah,
out.
of course.
You have to go
Cubic
out.
volume
Yep.
becomes your best friend when
Yep.
proportions are limited in terms of foot space.
I wanted to do a wood building because my father was a logger, a lot of friends that I associated with, and the wood industry gets a lot of bad rap. You know, we're not supposed to cut down trees. We're not supposed to cut down old growth trees. But nothing really grows in the shadow of an old growth. So if you want new growth, you have to cut them down. So this post is actually holding 3 ton. They wanted to put a steel post in here, and I said, is there nothing in wood? So we contacted a barn building engineer, and he said, you need old growth because it's structural. So this comes from a train bridge that was being removed, I think 1850, they felt it was cut down.
It's almost like a big artery that holds all of the rest of
Yes.
this majesty together.
Essentially, the architectural strategy is very, very simple. The roof inclines or opens up towards a space that requires greater volume. And I imagine that simple, singular strategy of seesawing these roofs creates a variety of experiences while having a unifying consistency about the interior.
How about temperature balancing, keeping the climate right at all times? How do you do that?
We have air intake that pulls from the forest, and it comes through at 55, 56 degrees, so that's my air conditioning. It's all natural.
It's incredible. Should we take a look at some more?
Okay, let's go.
Making nature part of the build environment is not a new idea. The iconic falling water home built by Frank Lloyd Wright in the early 1930s was built over a waterfall.
His goal was to create an organic structure in harmony with the surrounding landscape. The water of the river underneath was used to cool and humidify the house.
So now I'm going to show you one of the suites that we have.
Wow. Wow, double height. And again, great volume in here.
There is, and part of it was to have like the treehouse feel, so that you could go upstairs to where you sleep, and then downstairs you have your little living area, you have your bath.
Some more stone down in the floor again, timber floors. How about the wall coverings? What's there?
Plant matter,
Okay.
cellulose, because I wanted a wall that breathes. Most of the wallpapers that we use today don't do that. They're vinyls.
Sure.
So in this case, it's breathing and moving, just like the wood is breathing and moving. When I say that, it has to do with humidity, temperature control, all of that.
Okay.
We were doing LED lighting, but I don't do LED lighting by any of the beds. There, I've gone back to actually incandescent lighting because it affects your eyes. So then health becomes involved.
It's brilliant to hear that you're really thinking so carefully about every level of indulgence here. Do you think good design and good architecture can actually improve people's health?
Absolutely. And I say that with passion from my heart.
When guests come here, I mean, are they surprised? You know, because your take on the whole eco-living might be different to what they perceive.
It is. They come actually expecting almost like camping.
Yes.
And what I wanted to do was to find out whether or not luxury was equally as environmental and ethical.
What you've done is illustrate that you can have those luxuries and that you can have an environmental eye and an awareness for the planet and still have a great place to live in that looks good and feels functional.
This is a really comfortable space. It must be great when you're in here and you actually hear your guests congregating and sharing their experience of being in your home.
It is, and I've made it so that it is very comfortable, very soft, so lots of conversation happens. So I have one last water feature that I want to show you.
Okay.
Ready?
Let's go. Come on, you have to have a pool, don't you? Especially in this beautiful environment.
Well, I do, but it came about in a very strange way. Building code requires a fire reservoir.
Oh,
Okay, and what is a fire reservoir?
Should at any point in time the building start on fire, they are able to have access to fresh water.
Right, okay.
There's 80,000 liters of fresh water here to help put that fire out. It's filled daily with fresh water. We designed this with infinity edges so the water is constantly moving.
That's so clever. So basically you've said, find a fault, make a feature.
The house is safer and the guests are happier.
Yep.
I think the architectural merit of a building such as this is there's a passion here, and you very skillfully created that template so that anybody that visits can leave refreshed, bettered, and enhanced.
I actually don't feel like I visited a property today. I feel like I stepped through a portal into another dimension where you can actually live harmoniously with nature.
We all want to have a low impact on the environment, and she's taken that to the next level. She's built around herself this incredible framework that is so respectful of the planet.
If you can have luxury without sacrificing the planet, I'm all in.
I don't know about you, but when I think of vacations, I really think of spreading right out.
Oh, absolutely. The last thing you'd want to do is be living on top of each other.
However, our next homeowner had a very different idea to that. She decided to share a home with friends, and they built it together, and now living side by side, they've created perfect harmony.
Sounds very cozy. Shall we take a look?
It's one of the simpler ways to minimize your carbon footprint.
Architects Milana Jansen and John McMinn worked on several projects with Graham and Karina before they became friends and started vacationing together. When Graham was offered a piece of land for sale, the idea of the shared home was born. Hey, guys.
Hey!
I'll tell you, the sense of proportion here is just fantastic.
There's a huge deck, there's a huge roof, and there are two houses here. It's like the coolest communal space I've ever seen.
I'd love to get a little bit of background, if we can, about the history of this building.
We actually bought the property with another couple, and we wanted to create a place that we all had our own individual private spaces, but we wanted to share resources, electricity, water, and things like that. Originally, we wanted to do a lot of little buildings kind of dotted along a boardwalk.
But the property was zoned for one house, and so we went and talked to the planner at the municipality and said, you know, we have two of us, we want to have two cabins. And he said, well, I think if there's a conjoined basement, it would be fine. And so basically through that, we were allowed to have one conjoined basement, and then we have the separate cabins. And so it works out really well.
In the end, two families, one roof, driven by the zoning bylaw, took us to this design.
We've sort of done the entrances on opposite sides so that we have a degree of privacy, and yet there's a whole set of connected spaces.
The idea was really to have matching cabins with bunkies beside them and to have lots of exterior space that we could enjoy as well.
So what are we looking at here in terms of inside and outside space?
The deck and the roof are 40 feet by 80 feet, roughly, and so it's about 3,200 square feet. But the internal spaces of the two cabins are about 450 square feet on the floor, and then with a partial second floor, it's about 600 square feet of interior space.
I mean, it's undoubtedly a massive structure, and the post and beam nature of its build style means that you can hang those swings and have all manner of things dangling down all over the place.
When you're building a roof like that, you want to make good use of it. Having the lights, hanging the swings, for sure, it's a great armature.
Well, it's great to have a lovely sense of what's happening outdoors, but I'd love to get inside. Can we have a peek?
Okay, let's go have a look.
Let's go have a look.
Wow. You know, this really does continue the conversation that you have outside, doesn't it? The idea of this incredible ceiling height.
We wanted to have a real sense of space on the inside. We needed a bedroom at the front, and we needed a bathroom and bedroom at the back, so we thought, okay, we will cut the hole out in the middle and have the full height space. Because we were trying to make such a small space work, things like the kitchen cabinets filling the entire back of the cabin, the stair kind of hidden behind the wall there, you know, all of those things, they had to be worked out very, very carefully to get it to work just right.
What are your environmental sustainability issues? What are the things that you wanted to consider when you put this project together?
As we were designing, we were looking at how everything could be very sustainable. And so local materials was one thing. We have solar panels on the roof. The big roof is not only a big shade canopy thing, but it's also for collecting rainwater. So we have cisterns out the back.
We found some billiard tables that we repurposed for countertops. We used bamboo for the cabinets.
And how about the cloth that I can see that's part of that banister?
Yeah, the railings are actually marine canvas that were repurposed from a factory that was closing in the city. The floors are earthen floors. It is made of clay, sand, and there's a little bit of straw mixed into it.
So we've seen space number 1. We'd love to see what happens on the flip side. Can we have a look?
Let's go and have a look.
Let's go.
Living in a shared house like this is quite sustainable, building to the size you actually need. The pods under the larger roof give you the exact size you need as a living pod. So the extra space on the decks under the roof are providing all of that bonus living space that doesn't have to be heated and cooled.
It's so interesting to see someone else's interpretation of exactly the same space. How did that actually happen? You know, two couples get together and say, okay, you know what, let's live under one roof.
We really did a lot of talking about what's private here, what's public, where are we going to be sharing, what will it look like to have a meal together outside. All of that was kind of calibrated to make sure that we weren't invading each other's space.
Yeah, because it's all in the design, isn't it?
Yeah.
They are kind of blinkered, but it's not like you've fully turned your back on them. So it's not rude, but it is private.
Yeah.
The bunky's really cute as well on both sides. It's lovely to have that little separate pod just kind of positioned there.
Yeah, we were able to add a bridge with our pod too, and we really make use of the upstairs. Sometimes we have a tent up there. It's really beautiful to sleep up there.
The idea was if you have guests, you know, to be able to have separation so that they can go in there at night and be separate, and then they can come and, you know, join in during the day. And so it was all about trying to plan how to live together in various ways with both the partners, but also with guests that come and have the degree of separation necessary.
Sharing a home, I imagine, could work really well or could be a really tricky operation, but you've got separate kitchens, separate bathrooms, so although you're combining under one roof, you're not over each other at every turn. So to me, this is a really clever way to lead two lives under one roof.
It's almost like a community condo. You know, people live in condominiums, you share a roof, and it's exactly what you're doing here, isn't it? You know, the greatest architects really push the envelope to redefine what housing is. Previously, you would think it's 4 walls and a roof, but in terms of planning, it can be a roof, the floor, and anything you want to put between those.
They've fused two separate family lives under one roof, but they've merged and blurred the boundaries in such a way that it works really well.
Using an eco-conscious palette has really created a very unique home here that sits harmoniously in this space. The reclaimed timber, the locally sourced stone, the earthen floor all add up to a feel-good factor that's not about ruining the planet, but just creating an incredible home. We've been exploring what drives people to create an eco or sustainable home. We visited 3 very individual properties that all demonstrate you do not have to sacrifice the planet to create your own personal escape.
First up, the Homestead, a really interesting property put together by Rick and Wendy.
They totally redefined what it is to shop local by creating their home out of the very ground it was built on.
The Eco Lodge, built by Laurie, one of the things that really caught my attention was the clever use of water everywhere you looked, proving that luxury and sustainability can go hand in hand.
House number 3's communal living shows you that 2 budgets are better than 1 when it comes to realising your eco-home dream. Using sustainable items and recycling all adds up to an equation that's all about the planet and style at the same time.
3 fascinating but essentially very different eco-homes, but they have one thing in common.
They're all great escapes.